Thank you, Prajakta and Sachin. Sarvanna Maza Namaskar. It is such a hearty feeling to actually welcome all of you here. It's one of those surreal movements where you see a lot of people coming here and talking about something that we've been talking about for the last several decades, which is foundational learning and early childhood education. So I think, firstly, it's just wonderful to see all of you. So thank you so much for making time and being present here, especially all the dignitaries whom we're going to hear in some time. Today is also a special day. Sorry, मी थोड़ा जास्त अंग्रेजी मध्ये बोलणार कारण I think we have a different mix of audience. But anyway, the sessions are going to be a mix of Hindi and Marathi. But today is also a special day, I think primarily because I think today happens to be the 130th birth anniversary of Tarabai Modak, Padma Bhushan awardee, and an icon in the Indian education, particularly in Maharashtra. Tarabai Modak founded the Kanya Mahavidyalaya in Mumbai, which was the first institutions in India to offer higher education to women way back in 1932. More importantly, in the 1930s, it was Tarabai Modak who started the whole idea of Bal Shikshan, the Balwadi system, pre-primary education for children, and then obviously which was aimed to provide the stimulating and nurturing environment to promote development of children at very early years. Tarabai Modak also recognized the importance of vocational education, not just early childhood, but vocational education for children, integration with schools, especially for girls. So she was who she was. I think she was definitely a legend who inspired many like us in education. There are also many organizations. Nilesh is here. Quest runs the Tarabai Modak Fellows, a bunch of whom are also fortunate to be, we have been working closely with, which I feel is a fitting tribute to the courageous legacy of who Tarabai Modak was. So just, yes, I mean, this space, I think today's conference, we just wanted to make sure that this is a space that is dedicated to Tarabai Modak and her legacy. So thank you so much for being here. That aside, I think we are obviously here to discuss FLN, Foundational Literacy Numeracy, and Early Childhood Care and Education. But why FLN? Why now? And I think this is something that there are also skeptics in the education system, or इस room में जितने भी skeptics हैं मेरी तरह might have been saying कि this is something that we've been talking for the last several decades. कोई कभी कभी कहावत ये भी हो जाता है 70 साल हो गया हिंदुस्तान को इंडिपेंडेंस आते हुए अभी भी बच्चे को लिटरेसी न्यूमरेसी में ही फंसे पड़े बट देयर इज नथिंग इट्स नॉट लाइक आई मीन पीपल माइट से देयर इज नथिंग न्यू दैट वी डोंट नो टीचर्स ऑलवेज कीप सेइंग कि ऐसा कुछ नया नहीं है जो आप सिखा रहे हो सिखा सकते हो and the skeptics are partly right because I think even during this conference over the next 7 to 8 hours there is nothing dramatically different that we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about the things that we have been talking about, but it is important that we talk about it. It is important we talk about it now, right? And why? ASER 2005, right, says 65% of the students in grade 2 to 5 cannot read grade 2 text. 49% of grade 2 to 5 students cannot do subtract. This was back in 2005 when ASER was started. Fast forward, ASER 2022, 80% of the students in grade 3 in schools in rural India cannot read grade 2 text, and 75% students in grade 3 in rural India cannot do subtraction. And what has been staggering is that the learning levels in basic reading ability, and check out this data, the basic reading ability, the learning levels of children in 2022 are pre-2012 levels, pre-2012. इसका मतलब जितने हमने पिछले 10 साल में as NGOs, as governments, as a civil society, as teachers, जितना हमने incremental growth देखा है, that has all gone back a decade. Think about the staggering effect that it is going to have on, everything that is due to do with education, primary level ho, secondary ho, and the next level. 2022 Institute of Competitiveness Study, there's an Institute of Competitiveness Study, which says, and I quote, basic reading, writing, and performing arithmetic provides a foundation for higher order thinking because metacognitive abilities help the learner to reflect, evaluate problems from logical arguments, understanding different perspectives. When children learn to read and write, they acquire phonological awareness about letters, syntactic knowledge, wisdom about words, and learn to express their thoughts. The learner needs intuitive and explicit guidance from teachers, parents, and peers to foster comprehension, and this skill further helps in understanding the meaning of a text. Even a bit of our national curriculum framework also talks about it, right? Hence, and this is critical, without foundational education, children will not obtain the human capital that need to enhance their careers, become engaged citizens that contribute to the growth of economy and nation building after they leave school, right? And there are other staggering facts. Recently, the World Bank assessment report in India said that 50% of children lack FLN skills uh, by grade 5. 50%. Due to the pandemic, and all of us know about this, Azim Premji report also said about this, minimum 82% of the children have lost at least one ability in both arithmetic and in language, right? And UNICEF also had done something in 2022, 2019-22 in low and middle income countries. This is more of a global research. They said that the share of children aged 10 years, which is roughly about grade 5, who cannot read, write and understand simple text went from 57% to 70%. तो इतना पूरा दुनिया इतना डल है, इतना मतलब truth है, this is where the challenge is there any hope then? Is there really any hope for all of us to actually come together and say that there is something that needs to be done to solve this really? It seems simple, but I think we'll understand why this is a complex problem. So do we have any hope? So the National Education Policy 2020, I think already spoken about it, has recognized foundational literacy and numeracy as an urgent, necessary prerequisite for learning. In fact, the Honorable Prime Minister, when he was talking about it at a center stage on the National Education Policy, said that the rest of the policy will become irrelevant if FLN is not achieved for the children of India. So it is on record that the highest supreme authority is talking about it. Nipun Bharat Mission was launched in July 2021, the National Initiative for Proficiency in Reading with Understanding and Numeracy. The overall goal, Nipun Bharat ka goal kya hai? They say that by 26-27, every child in India, it says every child, 100%, 100%, they're going to achieve the desired FLN by the time they complete grade 3, and this is, we are talking about 3 to 8-year-old children across the country. India has been conducting the National Achievement Survey. Everyone knows about it, the NAS surveys since 2001, and recently they conducted the foundational learning study in 2022. I think the results are awaited, but I think once this foundational study results, they're going to form the basis of any mission for the state. States are also doing well. I think the states have also picked up, because we all know that it's not easy. It's not one policy's job. I think ultimately the state, districts, blocks, everyone has to perform. Government of Tamil Nadu had launched Ennum Erudum to address the learning gaps of foundational years. Perhaps one of the fantastic case studies everyone has to study. It was one of the largest community-led movement to reduce the learning gap in children. 2% of the education budget of the state led to 30% incremental outcome in learning levels. Fantastic case study done by JPAL. I think we all need to study it as educators. Government of Uttar Pradesh launched Mission Prerna in 2021 and has been working on teaching learning materials, teacher training, and their monitoring systems. Government of Tripura launched Nipun Mitra. I think LFE organization and both CLR, we work in Tripura now. I think they launched the Nipun Tripura, which has made an FLN a top priority in the state. Government of Assam has launched Nipun Aksom. Delhi government, as we all know, I think is running something called Mission Bunyad. I think it's one of their high-flying programs and been able to sort of significantly bridge the learning gaps, especially after COVID. And Maharashtra has officially launched the Nipun Bharat mission. But I think a lot more has to be done. I think for all of those of you who are sitting here, we've all worked in Maharashtra, so we know the reality on the ground. I think a lot of effort still needs to happen. I think Pune Zilla Parishad, I think Diet Principal Madam is here. I think they're going to talk about like how Pune ZP has been taking initiative around this. We also have some blocks, tribal department. There are certain project offices which have been taking initiative. There have been some dynamic officers on the ground, but all of this is happening in bits and pockets. So if all of this is happening, we know what needs to be done, then what is the point of being here today? I know we're celebrating Tarabai Modak, but also I think what is the point in this group coming here today? So here's what are my invitation. There are three sort of insights, three sort of key questions that I'm going to leave all of you with, and my hope is that we explore, my invitation is that we actually explore it in the course of this whole day. First, many of us sitting here today, many of us are working for non-profit organizations. There are many innovations from NGOs, the civil society, teachers, officers, certain government officials, and we've been seeing this for the last few decades. I think working in 100 schools, 1,000 schools, I think it works fantastically well. But the issue of India is not an issue of 1,000 children or 1,000 schools, it's an issue of millions. So what does it really take for us to universalize any of these innovations? The goal is 100%. It is not 99.5 or 60 or 70%. It is 100% children. So how do we sort of universalize some of these innovations across our children? I think that's my first invitation for all of us to really think about it. Second, which is the most convoluted and the million-dollar question, which I'm sure all the veterans sitting here might laugh at it, is the foundational continuum. This 3 years of pre-school and the 2 years of schooling. Everyone has been breaking their head on how do you get ICDS, Anganwadi system and the school system to work together. And this has been like a huge, massive thing. And I think at some point we need to put our foot down and say what is actually possible. You know, what is possible, what is in our locus of control, what can be done, needs to be established rather than constantly talking about what cannot be done. So I think like that is something that we need to prove. How is that 5-year continuum going to really look like in real life on the ground? The third piece of it is convergence for efforts for research-backed evidence, and I think I cannot emphasize on it enough. I think as NGOs, and I think I've been in this sector for the last 15 years now, huge efforts still need to happen on research-backed evidence for all the efforts that we're doing. How do you generate evidence for learning which will help in universalization of policies, but more importantly, they will actually help in the government spending. I think most time of the scarce resource, I think there's no question around it कि budgets अभी तक 20 साल 25 साल हो गए अभी भी बोल रहे 3% of GDP 3% of GDP spend कर रहे हो, but ठीक है जो 3% GDP है उसको भी ढंग से कैसे करना है, because as a country we always will operate with scarce resource. But I think if you are able to tell the government, and Tamil Nadu is a great example, saying that 2% आप state education budget का आप लगाओ for community mothers and women inside communities, that is leading. इस तरीके का एविडेंस बताएंगे, then I think it's easier to sort of convince bureaucrats and IAS officers sitting saying that मेरे पास इतना ही amount है, where what is the best way for me to actually spend that money. And there's huge evidence. I think recently I was listening to Karthik Muralidharan, who's a very economist and also from JPAL. I think was talking about this study जो early childhood education में हुआ था. How do you increase the early developmental milestones of children? So they did 3 or 4 things. One, उन्होंने एक extra ECCE worker को डाल दिया आंगनवाड़ी में. Second, they paid increase the honorarium of the existing Anganwadi worker. Then they did performance-based incentive for the Anganwadi. जो अच्छा काम करेगा compliance-based तो उसको ज़्यादा salary दे दिया. And the last, I think they gave higher incentive for the first grade teacher in a school. ये चारों करके देखा. Pay hike had zero effect on developmental milestones. Performance means zero effect. What had effect was having that extra ECCE worker who increased, ये actually common sense पता चल जाता कि भाई extra ECCE worker आपने आंगनवाड़ी का support में डाल दिया, but that 38 minutes of extra instruction time actually resulted in significant increase in child developmental milestone. Now, such kind of longitudinal RCT-based evidence-backed initiatives, there are very few. I wouldn't say nahi hai, but I think there are very few. I think collectively, all of us, what can we do to increase that? So I hope that we can actually do all of these things and do some justice to the nuance and complexity that surround this issue. This simple issue, ये simple issue of foundation learning को बहुत complexity and nuanced पे उलझा हुआ है. We are actually fighting a system where spending money on human development and education is still deprioritized over lengthy roads, tall statues, and nuclear missiles. So we live in that country still. We are hopeful of a system where a bunch of inputs like cycles and buildings and tablets and TVs get converted into schemes. We are actually hopeful of a system, and let it be buildings or technology, whatever it is, converting inputs into schemes comes easily for these systems. And we are all serving a system which is based on inputs and the working with the field level staff, let it be Anganwadis or teachers who live a life of compliance, So how do we sort of start shifting that, right? And the more and more we are learning about education and delivering quality learning in India, it has 2 key binding constraints. And I think if there's anything that we take away of how do you really solve for these binding constraints, it is pedagogy and governance. And we all know about this, but I think the more and more we are learning, these are the only 2 pillars that can lead to improved learning and well-being for our children. And I reiterate, providing quality education for 240 million children in India is not just a technical issue, it is not just a technological issue, it's a socio-political issue. That's why it requires a lot of mobilization of people, and we still have a long way to go. Abhi tak abhi 30-40 साल हो गए, फिर भी I think we're still scratching the surface. And at the forefront of all of this is a 5-year-old organization, Leadership for Equity, and a 40-year-old organization, Center for Learning Resources. And I'm fortunate actually to be, leading both of these organizations with the wonderful sort of team members who are all here, who are leading the work every single day to make sure that we are providing the best quality education to the most marginalized and underserved communities of India. And as we host you all today, I think our hope is that we look at unpacking some of these elements of schooling, of primary schooling, of Anganwadi systems, and look at really the systemic environment that is affecting the Anganwadis in schools. Not just saying that this is what the teacher, this is what the children need, fine, but I think there's an environment in which the Anganwadi workers, the teachers are living in. How can we look at the nuances of that? And that need to be changed, nudged, and influenced to reach that 100% children mark. And we hope that the discussions today generate the awareness and conviction in all of us to be allies in this journey. So with that, I think just want to thank all of you once again so much for being here. I think it's just thank you so much for giving your time, because I think it's important in these nowadays, time means everything. So just being here, spending with us and listening to all the amazing speakers who are going to come next. So thank you all so much. And with that, I think we will kickstart this conference. And I think I'm going to invite the one person who I feel understands the importance of this day much more than me or most of us sitting in this room. Zakia Kurian, co-founder and director emerita of CLR. Many of us already know Zakia Kurian. She's been a teacher and a teacher educator both in India and abroad. Her professional work spans multiple areas in development, education, socioeconomically disadvantaged children, includes the designing of curriculum, training programs, and multiple other material for early childhood care, elementary education. Zakia Kurian has served on national and state level committees relating to education policy and program, and more recently the National Task Force on Early Childhood Care and Education by the Ministry of Women and Child Development, Government of India. Everyone thought that she's catching up with age and she's retired, but she recently, for CLR, she developed our 0 to 3 new renewed curriculum, which gives us a lot of hope. So I think, what they say is right. I think we all do stand on the shoulders of giants. So I think here's one giant I'm going to invite on. So Zakia ma'am, the floor is yours.